The Other Side of Fear, a backpacker's memoir by Jenni. Unhidden Heroines, Book 1, Chapter 12. Thank you, ma'am. May I have another? After Jose left, my life was hell, but I found another layer of what I was made of. I found a job at Golden Corral working dinner shifts and also a job at Home Depot working from 4 a.m. till 10 a.m. Stocking shelves. My first lawn season was completely finished, and I had confided to my customers with whom I'd gotten close to tell them about my situation. Many of them helped me find odd jobs to increase my cash during the winter. Most of my customers were females who either chose to support female-owned business or simply didn't trust men being on their property. For many, my lawn visits were the highlight of their day. They would make snacks or have cold beer waiting for me, then we'd sit on the porch to visit for a while. I delighted in the freedom that I had to give my customer service at the level these women deserved for my business and my customers instead of working under a manager who didn't care about customer service at all. As my customers turned into friends, I was often invited to meet their family and friends to share special occasions like birthdays, weddings, and funerals. They impacted my life just as much as I did theirs. I was surrounded by angels, really, even though things sucked a lot. I was better for it. My first lawn season was over, and the time had come for me to learn how to run the business all by myself. To think about taking all of that on alone seemed insurmountable. I didn't even know how to put trim line in my weed eater or sharpen a blade on my mower. I had no idea what I would do if anything broke down while I was out mowing. Hell, I couldn't even change a flat tire. Those machines were so heavy, and I would be lifting them all alone, one job after another, all day, every day. How would I do bigger cleanup jobs? How would I use a chainsaw to do bigger trimming jobs? It was time to grow and expand. If some dude could figure out how to do all those things, I damn sure could too. So I did. I got to the point where I could do 8 lawns in one day all by myself. Luckily for me, that year we had a drought, so I wasn't overwhelmed with work on a regular basis. Then, in May, I finally graduated with my associate degree from the community college. I had worked so hard and finally gotten to the top. I wasn't the least bit embarrassed that a 2-year degree had taken me 4, when statistically I should have been dead more than once throughout those years. Only I knew what I had sacrificed to get that diploma. Only I knew how many extra hours I had picked up, what I had given up to get there, or the time that I had put in to make it happen no matter what war was waging in my life. But I had always felt like I owed it to school to be faithful to it because during those dark times, it was the only thing that kept me alive. Well, that and my Gracie. My mom threw a beautiful graduation party with delicious snacks to enjoy with friends who had shared moments along the way. I invited friends who had made over the years, as well as my lawn customers who had been also a pivotal part of my path getting there. I was so proud of graduating with my associate degree in May that I celebrated by enrolling in classes in a 4-year university to continue toward my bachelor's degree beginning the following fall. After all the brutal wounds I had received from the men in my life, I honestly believed my picker was inherently broken. I believed I was powerless and would never have any kind of relationship with a man who would not harm me in some way. I had a long, repetitive history of brief relationships with men that all ended very similarly. Something inside of me was done with being open to any new man in my life. I had always been attracted to women for as long as I could remember, but I was never brave enough to explore that part of me, mostly from the guilt and shame that ensued daydreaming of it, imparted by years of programming by the church. It was yet another thing I buried deeply inside of me to be addressed later. Then, after so many terrible experiences with men, I thought, I'm obviously cursed with men. Maybe it's because I should never be with one. Maybe it's because I am gay. The bad taste left in my mouth from Jose's abusive, narcissistic behavior was enough to kick the door wide open into exploring it. One night, I was outside working on one of my machines when one of my lawn customers, hey Lisa, called to invite me to meet her and a friend for dinner. I was so happy to have the invitation. I had just finished a long, hot week working outside, and it happened to be a Friday night. Eagerly accepting, I washed the grease off my hands, changed my clothes, threw some mascara on and some hoop earrings in, and out the door I went. I had no idea I was about to meet the woman with whom I would share my first romance. I was intrigued by Casey the moment we met. and the interest was obviously mutual as dinner progressed. For me, she was the most perfect combination of masculine and feminine, with her short blonde hair, the feminine curves of her body layered with stout muscles from years of weightlifting. The men's V-neck shirt she wore fit perfectly across her strong shoulders, just barely accenting the veins popping out of her biceps. I couldn't stop looking at her all through dinner, intrigued by her as well as what she was setting on fire inside of my being. After dinner, we went back to Casey's house to have drinks and hang out. I found it so fascinating that she owned her own semi and pulled loads to Colorado and New Mexico for Walmart. I found it fascinating that in her free time, she was a power lifter with national records. Weightlifting was one of the many passions we shared. As beers continued to flow on her outside patio, eventually the friend who had invited me to dinner challenged Casey and I to an arm wrestling competition, which neither of us would ever turn down. We squared up and started our match, a match that I ended up winning. Casey said that it was the moment she really fell in love with me because it was the first time anyone had ever beat her at arm wrestling. The next day, she had to pull a load that would keep her on the road for a few days, but we exchanged numbers with the intention to hang out when she got back. Our first hangout session, we had made a date to go to the gym together and get lunch afterward. And I knew when she pulled up in her loud-ass Harley Davidson that I was about to get on a motorcycle ride I would never forget. From that point forward, we spent hours on the bike, having adventures, lifting weights together all the time, had romantic date nights, and I learned how to two-step for the first time. We traveled to New Mexico for the Hot Air Balloon Festival, and I got to see everything from the view of her big semi. After the festival, we rolled into the mountains of Colorado to get potatoes from a farm for her to haul back to Oklahoma City. Seeing the world through the eyes of a truck driver impacted me significantly, as all of the other relationships had. This one moved way too fast. Just a couple of months after dating, she moved in. All the jokes about lesbians and U-Hauls are true! And shortly after that, the fairy tale was over. We both drank a lot, and there was something about the wounds we both had buried deep inside that brought out the worst in each other whenever we coated them with booze. Both of us were a mess of infected internal wounds from trauma buried deep years before we met, and all it took was one drink for both of us to open the door into heavy binge drinking, which led to nasty fights. The honeymoon was over just about as quickly as it started. It ended with a screaming match and her moving her stuff right back out, right in the middle of my first fall semester in my new degree program. Once again, school and work became my refuge. My Southside neighborhood was going downhill, and houses were going up for sale all over. A slumlord bought several of those houses and rented them out cheap, which brought a new wave of insecurity to my street. There were gunshots fired, cars vandalized or stolen, houses looted, people fighting, and constant drug traffic. The guy who lived in the house catty-corner to my driveway was a 19-year-old meth addict on house arrest who lived with his mom. Day and night, he was taking apart machines and computers and putting them back together, pacing in endless circles around his house. Drug dealers moved in across the street from me, and there was drug-related traffic at all hours. Another neighbor kept their pit bull on a short, heavy chain, barely alive enough to stand on wobbly legs before collapsing in his own excrement. The owners were also meth addicts who took the same level of care of their children as they did their dog, and no matter how often I called CPS and animal welfare, nobody ever came. This was no longer a safe neighborhood for me or my lawn business. And there I was, yet again, with the heaviness of a full semester, the heaviness of running a business by myself, the heaviness of financial lack. The drought had made it less difficult to run things by myself, but impossible to save for the winter. And yet another fucking heartbreak. One of the pieces of mail I received that rainy morning was a notice that my mortgage rate was going up again because of my homeowner's insurance, thanks to the worsening condition of my neighborhood. This was the third time my monthly payment had increased. This reality seemed like a far stretch from the good old American dream. This did not feel like a dream. It seemed like no matter how hard I worked, I never got ahead. I coasted by to finish finals and remembered the meltdown I had the day after I turned in my final projects. I just felt done. Nothing had gone as I had intended with my house or my financial plan to move forward. This was not moving me toward the feeling I had while I was in Cozumel. I felt so trapped. I had so much pain inside of me. Casey had given me a Walther PK 380 as an early gift for my birthday before our relationship blew to smithereens. The day before finals, I woke to a cold, rainy day and a mailbox full of bills from so much debt, which reminded me that my birthday was a couple of days away. My birthday had always been a source of pain for me. Pain from everything had become surreal. I took my gun and its box of bullets and went for a long drive. I drove back to the field where I was raped, only to discover that it was now a housing subdivision, so I drove further into a small town where I parked at another vacant field out in the country. I sat for a long time looking at the trees and crying, with the gun resting next to the box of bullets in my front seat, facing me, looking right at me. I had no idea how to load it, and I had never shot one. We just stared at each other for a long time while I cried. I had already attempted suicide twice before. This would be my third attempt. I couldn't even kill myself right. I couldn't do anything right. I made a deal with myself that I would give life a chance for one more day, because I thought about Gracie, and I thought about the promise I had made to myself about riding motorcycles in more foreign countries. I couldn't quit before making it there again. I had experienced true joy. I knew it existed. That part of me had died, the ember that had always been slowly burning, the one that ignited when I took that road trip at 19 years old. At one point, I got a message from Jose saying that I was the love of his life and that he would do anything to make things right with me, and was there any way I could help him get back across the border into the United States. I told him to go fuck himself. A week after that incident, sugar mysteriously made its way into a gas tank of my expensive zero-turn mower, which I discovered when the engine quit in the middle of mowing a 5-acre lot on a hot day. I assumed it had to be him somehow, all the way from Mexico, making a phone call to someone in the city who could keep an eye on my daily routine. It made me wonder what my rapist would do when he got out of prison one day.